recorded as well. For example, if you ask a question, so if you don't want to ask a question because you don't want to be recorded, then write down the question or send it to us via email. Just wanted to specify that. Okay, so I'm going to take over the screen and show you some slides. So basically, the slide that I'm going to present are one of the video are the slide that are presented in one of the video that we prepared for you. But the only difference is that I'm going to be quicker than in the video because I have a shorter time slot. So I'm going to give you a summary of the cost category and cost eligibility and how to prepare reporting in an EU-funded project. So costs, there are 4 cost categories. Personal costs, other costs, subcontracting, and indirect costs. So for indirect costs, I'm not going to go too much in detail about that, but basically indirect costs are are calculated via a flat rate, so a 25% rate that is applied when you sum up your personal costs and other direct costs. Subcontracting is not included in the calculation for indirect costs. Okay, so personal costs. So what makes a personal cost eligible? So the employee has to be working for you, for your organization and on the project. And about the salaries and what is included in the scope of EU eligibility, this you have to take into account the social security contribution, taxes, and an additional remuneration if they arise from national law or by the employment contract. So there are 3 ways to account for personal costs. So you can account it via the SME owner category, actual costs or unit costs. You can have both you can account your costs in both unit and actual costs, but it really depends on the specificity of your organization. So there is not just one way of accounting costs, and you can apply 2 ways depending whether this is applicable or not. Okay, so we account for hours by the hour. Here is the calculation for actual cost. I'm not going to go in further detail about that. Everything is summarized here. And if you want more, if you want to access to more information, I invite you to consult the grant agreement or the annotated model grant agreement, and specifically section 6.2, article A1. So same for unit cost. I'm not going to go into further about that. So personal cost. So like I said, you have to calculate the hourly rate and you multiply the hourly rate by the hours worked on the project. So we'll see in a minute how to record the time spent on the project. And you can add to that additional remuneration, but this only applies to a specific scenario. And in our case, in EC-funded project, it can only be linked to project-based remuneration schemes. So if you need to add additional remuneration to the hour works on the project multiplied by the hourly rate, you have to be careful and check whether this is eligible or not. Okay, so for the hours worked on the project, so you can only charge the project. You can only charge the hours that were actually spent on the project. You cannot declare budgeted nor estimated time. And you need to support the hours that you have declared to the action. And for that, you need a timesheet. So there are a specific case where an employee doesn't have to provide a timesheet. And this is when this person is working exclusively on the project. In this case, the employee has to sign a declaration, a statement saying that he's working 100% on the project. If this is not the case, like I said, you'll have to provide a timesheet. So you have to do it on a monthly basis. And this time record timesheet has to be signed by the employee who is recording the hour, who is spending time on the project, and his or her supervisor. I'm going to show you a template because there are few information that have necessarily to appear on the timesheet. So this is a template, but here we have listed the information that you have to display necessarily on the timesheet. So you have to specify the number and title of the project. The number is the number that you can find on the grant agreement. You have to put your organization full name, the name and date of signature of the person working on the project. So the person will fill in the table, and then he has to fill in his name and specify when he signed the timesheets. So, like I said, the person has to record the hours spent on the project. He has to specify also specifically on which work package and which task he worked on. And then his supervisor will countersign the document. So we need also the name of the supervisor. So in addition to the signature, you have to put the name of the person who countersigned it. Okay, so if you are wondering whether or not the timesheet apply for you, I invite you to ask yourself those questions. So I'm not going to go too much in detail about other direct costs, but it is composed notably of the travel cost, equipment cost, consumable, and other direct costs such as other direct costs such as participation to conferences. So just for you to know, if you have equipment costs, please note that there is a specific way of accounting for specific costs, for equipment costs, sorry, and notably to be reimbursed. So I invite you to read the remarks that are written there, and if you need further information, please refer to the article that we cited here. Okay, so if you receive, or yes, if you have received more than 325 kilo euro from the Commission in funding, then you will be asked to provide a certificate on your cost. So you will have to request an audit from an independent audit company, and you will have to provide this statement before the end of the project. So it will have to cover all the costs that you have incurred in the project, and to be provided to the Commission by the end of the project. Of course, if you are in this scenario, my colleague at LGI will tell you in advance. So we will tell you if you have to provide this statement or not. Subcontracting. So if you have subcontracting costs foreseen in your budget, please be careful when you use them, because there are very specific rules attached to this cost. So I strongly invite you to read Article 15 of the grant agreement, because here you have detailed all the specific rules attached to them. One of them is that you have to ensure best value for money. So when selecting the subcontractor, you have to ensure and somehow prove to the Commission in case of audit that you have picked the most the best fit for the job, and also in terms of money. One thing about subcontracting, if you are going to spend costs on subcontracting that were not foreseen in the grant agreement, please contact the coordinator as soon as possible, because we will have to contact the Commission and make sure that they agree on that, because subcontracting must have been agreed by the Commission before you incur them. So if you foresee to spend money on subcontracting, but it was not foreseen, please let us know ASAP. Okay, if you're wondering whether what you will buy is subcontracting or just a simple services, I invite you to look at this table, and there are elements to compare between the two. A services, for example, is buying a computer, and subcontract is, on the other hand, when you hire a company or an expert to carry out the activities that were attached to you in Annex 1 of the grant agreement. So this is just to give you example of the differences between a service and a subcontract. So indirect costs, like I said, it corresponds to 25% of your direct personal costs and other direct costs. Okay, what makes a cost eligible? So you have to make sure that you fit all the conditions that are set out here. If one of them is not, if you don't comply with one of them, then your cost is not eligible. So let me quickly go through them. So you have to actually incur the costs. So you have to be able to prove that you incur the costs. For example, it could be um, 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 I'm sorry, a receipt. Yes, exactly. A receipt. Sorry, I was. Yeah. So receipt to show that you actually bought the computer or the anything. A contract, employment contract for employees. I'm sorry, I hear some echo. Can someone turn off their microphone, please, or audio? Yes, thank you. You also have to incur the cost within the project duration. So between the start and the end of the project. If you incur costs after the end of the project, then it's not eligible. The cost should be foreseen in your budget, which is set out in Annex 2 of the grant agreement. The cost must be in connection with the action. The cost must be identifiable and verifiable and recorded in your account. The cost should be compliant with your national law on taxes, labor, and security, and also the cost must be reasonable compared to work. So the cost cannot be too high, and especially compared to the work that you were supposed to do. So, like I said, if any of the condition here is not met, then your cost is not eligible. In addition, what makes a cost not eligible? So, like I said, if it doesn't comply with one of the conditions set out in the previous slide, then it's not eligible. But some specific costs are not eligible. For instance, the costs that we have listed here, such as deductible VAT or bank costs for transfer of funds, are not eligible, and also excessive or reckless expenditure. So if you make expenditure that we can't justify with respect to the project, then you may be careful and check whether this is, and check with the coordinator and the commission whether this is excessive or reckless. Because if it is the case, then it is not eligible. And also, you cannot incur costs that you have made under another EU-funded project or any other project that you have under your organization. Okay, so if a cost is declared non-eligible, then you cannot be reimbursed for this cost. And if you have already been reimbursed for this cost, you will have to give the money back to the commission. Okay, so a short comment on reporting and how reporting works. So I know that for Lipré, your the first period ends end of March. So beginning of April, you will receive an email from the Commission saying that the reporting module is open. My colleague Leonard and Mathilde will give you instruction on how to fill in the information on the Commission portal. And one important thing about filling your expenses on the European portal is that you have to draft your financial statement in euro. So of course, not all of you is using euro as the currency. So you will have to apply an exchange rate to your costs to be able to draft your statement in euro. So you'll have to use an average of the daily exchange rates calculated over the corresponding reporting period. So there is a tool to help you calculate this average daily rate. There is a tool available on the European Central Bank website, and the link is available here. And if need be, I can put it in the video chat. But Yeah. So in order for you to incur your costs and declare your costs to the Commission, you'll have to apply an exchange rate, and there is a tool to help you with that. So this is all that I wanted to present to you today. And if you have questions, maybe it's best to save them for the Q&A session. What do you think, Leonard?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Delphine, for this very clear presentation. So I remind you that Delphine already registered herself in a video that is available in the mail that we sent you several weeks ago. This video is available on YouTube, so you can check it whenever you want. And the PowerPoint that she presented will be uploaded on the Flex platform. If you don't have access to Flex, please refer to the partner in charge of Lipari within your organization or come back to us. Regarding the reporting, I would like to give the floor a few seconds to Mathilde, who is going to explain you what are the next steps, and we will close this topic about reporting. And indeed, I confirm that after a first round of keynotes by the different speakers, we will open the floor and collect all your questions at this moment.
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you, Leonard. Just to go a bit more in detail about Lipari reporting, just to let you know that LGI is actually currently preparing 2 templates, one about technical reporting and the second one on financial. And so the template of financial reporting is going to be based on what the Commission is requested on the portal. So we will send it to you, the 2 templates and guidelines, maybe next week or the week after, as soon as it's going to be ready. And you will have to practice, or you can, just have a look on the templates. And as Delphine said, in end of March, the reporting session will be open on the portal, and so you will have to complete it on the website of the Commission, and also on the template and send back to us. If you have any question now or after, in the meantime, do not hesitate to contact us about it.
Thank you very much, Mathilde. Siegfried, I see that you have a question. So if it's related to the content of the sessions, I would like to invite you to ask your questions after the speakers. If it's related to something else, please make your comment.
Yeah, thanks, Leonard. I just want to make a comment on what Mathilde have just said, and I do think, to the interest maybe of colleagues here, it would help that perhaps just to confirm with you that is a process to send first the spreadsheet that would have been prepared, so that LGI can review the spreadsheet first and then contact the partner in terms of whether the spreadsheet is sort of on point, so that before they go to upload the information on the portal, the information on the spreadsheet it's on point. I think that helps a lot, because once the information is on the portal, it's a different story altogether.
Yes. But you cannot, because we need data until end of March. I'm not sure you will be able to complete the template that we will send it to you before this deadline. So if you want, you can try to complete it and send back to us, and we'll just have a look and say, okay, it seems good, and we can have a check all together. But we won't be able, you won't be able to do the whole exercise before the opening of the session. I'm not sure I was clear.
Okay.
Very clear, Mathilde. Thanks.
Thank you, Mathilde. if needed, we will come back afterwards to this issue. I would like also to invite you to pay attention to the chat in which Bernardo from the European Commission is sharing very important resources as the template of term sheets, some methods for personal cost calculation, eligibility of costs including into the model grant agreement, and also some differences regarding the cost categories. So have a look to the different resources that are providing here. Anna, I will give you the floor after, if you don't mind. Now I would like to invite Bernard from Strasbourg University to say a few words on his experience supporting some colleagues from the African continent when it comes to admin and financial management. So Bernard, if you want to share with us your expertise.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Leonard. Hello, everyone. My name is Bernard Mwaura. You can hear me? Hello?
Please, maybe it was, yeah, go on.
I can hear you.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay,
yes, we can
thank you so much. Thank you. So my name is Bernard Mwaura from Strathmore University. I work in one of LIPARI projects here at Strathmore University. So I will speak broadly on some of the aspects that all the partners need to pay attention to. And this one is in addition to the videos that were prepared and shared with us from RGI. And from my experience, one of the challenges that most partners have revolve around the internal controls, whereby you find that most institutions do not have a very well elaborate internal controls. And internal controls revolve around coming up with procedures or some guidelines that segregate duties from the accounting officers to the people who are handling the project, as well as having some procedures that prohibits or that make it sure that there is no conflict of interest, and also some measures to ensure that there is no irregularities when managing the EU-funded projects. The other item that it's quite important to put into consideration revolves around documentation. So maybe I can share. I had prepared a write-up for the same. So this is the write-up I had prepared for it. So I have already spoken on the internal controls. I will really be very fast because of time. So the other item is on documentation, filing, and record keeping. So as we know from the videos and the materials that I already shared, if you cannot be able to document a particular cost, then that cost will not be eligible. So it's quite important for the partners, even those who will not provide an audit certificate, to ensure that there is a very good filing system or documentation system that is actually above board, that will ensure that at any given time, any documents that are requested by the European Commission, they are available and they are simple and you can easily locate them, and they can support the costs that are already reported for the action. So the other aspect that is quite important is on the management of the procurement. And you'll agree with me that procurement is very crucial, especially for this action, LIPARI. So it's very important to ensure that the partners have a very good documented procurement policies and procedures that detail from the beginning of the process, that detail very clearly how the tenders are advertised, how invitations are sent to the prospective bidders, and even to ensure that the bidding process is as open as possible and accessible to all the potential suppliers, as well as dispatch invitation and try to publish any time the partners want to make any procurement of goods and services. So in most cases, you'll find that most of the costs will be deemed to be ineligible because this procurement rules or this procurement procedure was not followed. And the rule of thumb is that in case there is any doubts in regard to procurement, it's always good to contact the program coordinator. And in our case for this action, it's the RGI. So the other important aspect revolves around payroll and time management. So it's good to set up the timesheet recording system quite early. I know that the RGI will be sharing with us the template of the timesheet, but I do believe that for all the partners, we already had some some format of recording the staff time. And it's good to ensure that that timesheets are well approved in time, and these documents are not prepared during the time that you are trying to prepare the financial reports. So in addition, for the travel, it's always good for the partners to keep the boarding passes and any other documentation that can actually be used as a proof to confirm that the travel really happened. So the other item that is quite important to consider is on the management of cash and bank. So cash must be kept very safe, and it's a good practice that in situation whereby the partners can be able to separate the project fund from other funds, from other projects they are doing. It's actually the best practice. And also it's quite important to ensure that when we are disbursing out cash, we try to disperse the cash directly as possible without intermediary steps. This involves a situation whereby you have to withdraw cash and pay a supplier of goods or services. So the partners should try to avoid that. And also it's good to prepare some replenishment requests in good time before making any withdrawals, if any are there. Then it's good also to segregate the duties of the payment processes to just ensure that, as I mentioned earlier on, there is a good control in the management of cash and bank. Then now when it comes to the accounting, it's good for the partners to consider the concept of the double entry and use a specialized accounting software. You'll find that in most cases, depending on the amount of the grant allocated, some partners will not find it important to have a software, but it's really good to have a very good accounting software, and also ensure that the project bookkeeping staff are well qualified and they are well experienced, and they familiarize themselves with the grant rules and requirements. And then the other aspect now will come on the financial reporting. And on the financial reporting is just to ensure that all the records are kept up to date and the financial reports are drafted earlier enough before the deadline, so that you can try to seek any clarifications if there may be from the coordinator. I know Leonard and the team would actually be ready to help and assist. And it's quite important to ensure that the financial reports that we prepare for the action and for the project will actually agree with the accounting records, meaning that when you come back to the accounting system, you can be able to trace the report, the financial report that is submitted to the European Commission, to the partners' accounting records. And then it's also important to focus or to give a very good focus on the currency conversion, because I understand most partners use different currencies. At the point of converting the local currencies to the reporting currency, as it has already been presented to us, it's always good to focus on the link that is already shared, so that we have a harmonized way of converting the cost into the reporting currency. So these are some of the aspects that all the partners need to focus on, and as well as the materials that have already been shared. So thank you so much, Leonard. So I will actually also be available for the question and answer session. Yeah.
Bernard, thank you very much for your presentation. Everyone insisted on the clarity and the quality of your guidelines. So thanks a lot again. It's really an asset. Of course, this presentation will be shared as well with you. So now I would like to open the floor for the Q&A sessions. We have less than 1 hour. So I see that there is a question from Pat Wagner related to the ongoing amendment. Let me find again the question. Yeah. So Bernardo, maybe you can give an update regarding the grant the amendment of the grant agreement, because the amendment is still listed as in preparation phase on the portal. So maybe you should give some highlights about that.
It is very much in preparation. I mean, it's undergoing the last processes of approval. So the thing is that whenever you submit an amendment, it has to be looked at by no less than 5 other actors than me. So the thing is that the beginning of the financial year is quite complicated, and in this case, for example, my financial officer is still going through the motions in it, but my hierarchy has already approved in principle. So it's just a matter of ticking the boxes. I mean, you don't have to submit or supply anything else. The amendment is, I would say, 99% probability going to be approved as is. But we have to go through the steps. I mean, sadly, for large consortia, things get complicated because the financial checks get muddied. And I've done my best to chew the information for my colleagues, but I can't do the check for them. So the principle is that any budgetary change to the project or any budgetary change to any of the projects has to be checked by at least 2 sets of eyes, normally 3. So I've done my checks, my boss has done his checks, his boss has done his checks, but somebody in the middle still needs to do their checks. It's in the pipe, and the thing is that what I can tell you is that once the amendment is submitted, it goes really fast. So it can take less than a week to be approved. I mean, the difficulty is getting all the T's crossed, everything financially right. So it should be done soon. I mean, my objective is to try and get it over with, hopefully within this week, but I can't guarantee.
Well, thank you very much, Bernardo. I hope it answers your question, but not sure, but in any case, you have a feedback. Now, I would like to address the question of Milvia regarding the clarification on how funding agencies that are involved in the first pillar of Lipari should report on payments to third parties. So Bernardo, maybe it's a question for you as well.
Yes, that's, it's relatively straightforward. You do have a category in the reporting module, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, when you enter, the manage my grant and you do the reporting in there, there's one of the lines of the cost categories, which is financial support to third parties. And so you include there what the amount has been of that. And what you do have to keep, as for everything, is a record that shows that you've done these payments and so on and so forth, and keep that in record for whenever it is that you have to produce a certificate and financial statements, or whenever an audit can come. But that's mostly it. I have to check exactly where it is, but I'm pretty sure that the process is the same as in as for other grants. Just 1 second. Financial statement. Yeah, it's the completion of the financial statement. Basically, there is a line for financial support to third parties. Yes, indeed. I mean, I can very quickly share the screen so you can see that. 1 second.
Well, thank you very much. I think Milvia had the answer, so thank you again.
So
yeah,
this is the reporting module, and you see that one of the lines that you have in the reporting module is right here: direct cost of providing financial support to third parties. So you will have to fill in this little column here in the reporting module, and that's it.
Can I just ask a question, Bernardo, about this, because we have the template just in front of us. On line M, you see that we have 100% about the contribution, because we have different contribution in between the different pillars. Do you know if for the first reporting, all the partners will have 100% on the portal participation, and you will have to make a...
No, the point is that if I remember correctly, I mean, I have to remember from my times as a on the other side, okay? Because the problem is that I do see this, but I can't act upon it because I'm on the commission. So if I remember correctly, what happened here was that the line of maximum EU contribution, 100%, is something that you cannot alter. Okay, so the one that you can alter is the requested EU contribution, and that you will have to request as a function of the percentage that you are going to be claiming. How does that work? Per partner, you will have in LIPRE, so overall the rate of funding of LIPRE is 50%. You cannot go over that. Okay, so it is going to be up to you to manage that you are actually requesting for the whole grant duration, only 50% of the maximum eligible cost. You have to declare the full amount, okay? And then you'll see what the maximum EU contribution is, and that will be calculated automatically, but then you request a different amount from that. Okay? Is that more or less clear?
More or less.
Okay,
I mean, it's the difficulty with LIPRE in fact that the funding rate is not effectively 100%. I mean, if it's a RIA and by default the system will say it's 100%, but in reality it's not, because the call conditions are that you only get 50%, but the system does not recognize it automatically because it does not implement the funding rate automatically here, because it's 50% and we can't change it.
Okay, thank you.
You're a very particular case.
In any case, we will have several meetings internally to discuss that, and maybe we will come back to you if we need any support, Bernardo. Flora, I invite you to react.
Yes, I had a question. This is something that we already encounter in other projects. Mathilde, you're not involved in those projects, but we have RRA where we have 70% or 60% of funding. So this usually we ask the partners to claim only the percentage of their funding. But Bernardo, do you have a recommendation? Because this is something that we have to be careful as well. As you said, at the end of the project, we have to be able to claim the full grant. So that's a difficult calculation. So do you oblige us to ask for the percentage of funding, or it's just a recommendation, or you don't even have a recommendation?
Let me put it this other way. We are only going to give you up to 50% of your maximum eligible costs, however that it is done in the end. So my advice to you is to prudently only claim that. I mean, go along the grant and make provision for that so that it is clear, especially because you have partners within the consortium that are going to be claiming 100%, others that are going to be claiming less. So that is something that I cannot manage. Okay, that's something that is entirely up to you to see which individual partner gets what and how much. Okay, and that should be, I would strongly recommend that that had been part of your consortium agreement, which I do not want to see. Okay, let's put it clearly. No, but in the end, the thing is that overall, when the final maximum grant amount is calculated, it's going to be 50% of the eligible costs, and anything that goes over.
Yeah, that's always the difficulty, because we usually ask the participants to claim the percentage of their funding, but in the end, we have really to make sure that the full grant is requested by the consortium. So at the end, we have to make a lot of calculation at the last period.
Yes, but one thing here, the objective, let me correct you on that, is not to request the maximum grant amount. The objective is to request the actual costs that you have incurred, okay? And then we will reimburse the rate that is in the grant amount regarding to that, okay? If you complete the action with less resources, fine, great, fantastic, we will recover the excess money. If not, we will top you up to the maximum grant amount, okay? That's it. The maximum grant amount is the maximum grant of the top ceiling that we will not go over. But if you do things more efficiently, we will recover that difference.
Sure.
I hope that is crystal clear.
My remark was just, we always know that what was planned is not always what's happening.
I know.
So then sometimes you have overspending.
Yeah, that's clear. But regarding funding rates, you do know now ex ante, more or less, which partners are going to be reimbursed 100% and which partners are not. That's something that you have to have determined in your internal processes to see who is going to get how much, right? I mean, if I understood correctly how the grant amount distribution went, is not that everybody is going to get 50%. Some partners of certain pillars are going to get more than 50%, and other pillars are going to get less than 50%. Correct?
Sorry,
That
I
distribution,
hijacked the discussion. Yeah.
that distribution, that difference in percentages is something that I have zero control over, because I don't know ex ante what that distribution of percentages is that you came up with. Okay?
Sure.
So that's something that you have to control. You have to see that the partners that, I mean, and in the end, it's going to be a function of the real cost. So the thing is that you have to see if partners that with 100% of the costs go over budget, it's going to be more difficult for you to come up with the money than if a partner that has the 50% rate, because in the end, it's going to be a bigger piece of the grant amount. If you have partners that have a large sum of co-financing that they're bringing in and they disappear, then, for example, it's going to be very difficult. It's going to make more difficult for you reaching the 50% rate. So, I mean, I can't come up with recommendations for you for that, because let's say that this project is very particular in that. Other than watch out for it, be prudent and see really when it is that you're going to have overspending by which partners, and try to, let's say, shift resources from the same type of partner. So partners that are doing 50% or more of funding, they can transfer between themselves more or less easily, because you don't have to do weird calculations to pass from one rate to the other. Okay, but partners that are that you intend to finance 100%, you can transfer resources between them, no problem. You see what I mean? That should help you a little bit. You can also try to do transfers between the other types, but it's going to require a little bit more juggling.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah. Sorry, Leonard.
So,
Oh, no,
I don't know if I answered your question. Huh? It's
partly, I think partly, but it's good because you are giving us and also to the audience the level of complexity of Lipari management. Also regarding the complexity, because this is an issue for the coordination team. So that I suggest that we keep this topic for maybe another meeting, bilateral meeting between you and us. But in any case, it's highlighting the fact that Lipari is quite complex. I invite now several people that expressed some question on the chat to take the floor and to ask directly their questions, because sometimes it's not that clear on the chat. So Hannah from AESG, if you want to ask your question directly to the speakers. So Anna's question is, when accounting, we are supposed to account the cost for Pillar 2 projects separately, bearing the requirement of co-financing and Pillar 2 activities. You muted, Bernardo.
I'm speaking alone a lot of times, sorry. Okay, no, I would say for the moment, keep it simple in the sense that you declare you do what is fixed for everybody, and what is clear for everybody is the eligible costs. Okay, the maximum eligible costs are clear. Okay, so what you have to report and have to be sure to report is the reality of your maximum eligible costs. Okay, the adjustments of funding rate, that is something that your coordination team is going to have to play with you and see how it goes according to your consortium agreement, et cetera, et cetera. I think, I mean, for simplicity's sake, I would say that's something that is internal to the consortium and that your coordinator has to solve with you. Okay, I can only give you the generic advice that from the point of view of the Commission, what I am going to check and what auditors are going to check is the eligibility of the cost and the amount of the cost. Okay, the full cost, not just the one after applying the funding rate and so forth. The funding rate afterwards is applied, I would say, automatically. In typical grants, it's applied automatically. by the system. In your case, it's an added complication that you have to adjust it manually so that it fits 50% in the end, okay? Because what happens is that we are only going to reimburse up to 50% of the grant, okay? We're going to see the whole block of costs that you're going to declare, and we're going to look at 50%. That's your money. That's it. That's our level of assessment, okay? So what you have to do is, if you have different funding rates within your partners and so on and so forth, you have to be careful in adjusting that, okay? But I think that, as Leonard said, this is really something very much for your coordination team. Did I make the right judgment?
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. I will take the other questions in order to move on. If it's not clear enough, Anna, you can of course raise your hand and ask again your question. So I would like to come back to Alberto's question from Mozambique. So Mathilde said that bank taxes from the beneficiary side are not eligible in the reporting. If this is correct, then how do we record the expenditures related to them? So either Delphine or Bernardo, if you are able to answer that question.
Hello. So just to be clear, you have to account those costs in your internal account. But when it will be time to declare your costs to the Commission, either you retrieve those costs from your direct costs. So the Commission will not reimburse you for those costs because, as we said earlier, they are not eligible. But you can use the indirect costs to cover for them. So like I said, 25% of your direct cost will be indirect costs, and you can use the indirect costs to cover for them, but you cannot claim them as direct costs. Am I correct, Bernardo? Okay.
Almost. Let's say indirect costs are a flat rate, okay? We give you that money because why? There are costs associated to doing the project that you will incur and that you cannot tie directly to the project, okay? Unless you have a very, 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 very sophisticated accounting system, okay? So for example, heating of the building you're doing the work in, I don't know, general IT systems, office material. That's really very, very, very difficult to attribute to the fact that you're doing this particular project. I mean, it's not triggered because you have a project. Because you're running your operations, you will have a computer, you will have heating, you will have lighting, you will have that. So since you cannot attribute directly that cost, that is the Commission, what the Commission has done is that for all projects, we give flat rate share 25%, because before there was a way of doing this and it was hell, to put it frankly, to do these calculations. So they simplified and said, okay, we give you a flat rate 25% and that's it. Okay, what you do with that 25% is up to you. Okay, the bank rate costs are not eligible, so you should not claim them. If you choose to use part of that 25% that we give for the flat rate to cover that, that's up to you. But you have to have it very clear in your head that we are not paying for the bank flat rate. That's an ineligible cost. Okay? It's a nuance, but...
Okay, thank you.
Can I comment?
Yeah, please. Can you introduce yourself?
For my understanding, then it means we do not have to report on what we do with these 25% of indirect cost. Am I correct? Thank you, Bernardo.
The flat rate is given as a flat rate. What you have to have a proof of is all the costs that you're claiming as direct costs, okay? So everything that is subcontracting, all the eligible costs that you incur, you have to report on them and have a track of how you spend that money. The flat rate that is given as a multiplier of all your eligible costs, that's given to you as a flat rate. Okay, there's no you don't have to justify what you spend that on. I mean, generally speaking, there's a no profit rule, but there you go. That's it.
Is it clearer, Alberto?
Very clear. Thank you, Bernard, and everyone. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Actually, it was not Mathilde who said that. It was Delphine. Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto. Next question from Sylvie. Sylvie, do you want to take the floor? So for the first reporting, are the partners supposed to account for the 25% withheld by LGI under guarantee fund, and which is supposed to be sent to the partners after reporting? So maybe Bernardo, you want to answer.
There we go. Let's not speak alone again. So the cash flow during the project goes like this. We, Commission, give the coordinator normally around 50% of whole the project costs as a pre-financing, okay? And then at each reporting period, we add on to that pre-financing so that you can still spend the money as a function of what the costs were that you had in the period that you're reporting on, okay? So you have this first pre-financing, which typically is 50-ish, a little bit more than 50%. And then we add on top of that whatever you have claimed in the first reporting period. But during the project lifetime, we will only give you 85% of the money, okay? You will claim the cost, and when you reach 85% of the grant amount, we stop giving you money, even if you put in further claims for the reporting periods, okay? What happens is that the final reporting period, as a function of the final project costs, we take that 15%, which is the 5% of the guarantee fund and 10% that the Commission keeps, and we do the final payment, and we reimburse you what the real costs have been. I mean, if it's 100%, then it's 100%, or if it's 80%, then it's 80%, or whatever. You see what I mean? So, but during the lifetime of a project, we only give you up to 85% of the money that was established as a maximum grant amount. Okay, so that 15% that is retained by the Commission, so it's 5% of the guarantee fund plus the 10% that we don't give you during the lifetime of the project, that will be used to do the final payment as a function of the final grant amount that you actually spend, what your real costs are. So we calculate what is called the payment of the balance. And if we have given you more money than you have spent, we will ask it back. And if we have not given you enough, we will top on and make this final payment. I hope that was clear enough.
Thank you very much, Bernardo. Sylvie, I hope it was clear enough. Do not hesitate to ask your question, to specify your question if needed. Suzanne, I invite you to ask your question directly to the speakers. Suzanne, you have been raising your hand, so I was wondering you wanted to ask questions, so please do so. You are muted.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah. Perfectly, yes.
Okay, thank you. So my question is, expenses like air ticket, do we assume that EU takes up 100% of such expenses, or the 50% rule also applies there?
Okay. Again, all expenses, personnel cost, any type of cost, okay? You have to declare what you have paid, 100% of what you have paid. What you will receive at the end from the EU will depend on what your funding rate is, okay? And the funding rate is something that for LIPRE overall, for all the project, is 50%, okay? However, certain parts of the project are funded at more than 50% and others are funded at less than 50%, okay? And that specific detail, it's the coordinator who has it, okay? So in general, what you have to put in as cost claim, saying, okay, my costs have been this much, you have to put the full cost, okay? You always have to say what your full cost has been. And then, as a function of what your rate of funding is going to be, the coordinator and you have to see how much of that you are going to claim, okay? And that's where I'll show again very shortly the screen. Where is this? There we go, this one. Let's see, can you see the screen? Okay, so basically this is the what you will have to enter in when you enter your cost claims, okay? And
so sorry, we have a white screen actually.
You have a white screen of this? Okay, let me see, maybe I got the wrong one. Let me try again. Sorry. One day I will get the hang of this. This one. Okay, now you should see it.
Yes.
Good. So this is the A reporting module, okay? So basically when you put in your financial statement, you will have to enter here the little numbers that you've had and the cost claims that you have. And here you will see that out of that, the total costs will come, and this will be an automated calculation. The maximum EU contribution will appear here, which will be the 100%. And down here, you will have the requested EU contribution. So the maximum EU contribution will be a function of your real costs. And the requested one will be how much you adjust as a function of the funding rate that your particular organization has within Libre. Okay? I hope that was clear enough. Again, that's the complexity of this particular project.
Yeah.
Okay, then if I could ask another question, please. We talk about person months. Okay, we talk about person months. Am I correct to assume that one person month is equivalent to 20 working days, and that one day is equivalent to 8 working hours?
Okay, so there we go into the fun world of the hourly rate and how you calculate your personnel costs. Okay, so the thing is that when you have your personnel costs, typically what you have to have is for each person that is working for you for the action, for the project, you need to see what contract this person has, okay? Be very, very careful with this. You can only claim costs for people that are under a contract with you, okay? It has to be compliant with local labor law, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to be extremely careful with that, okay? So once you have the contract, in that contract, normally you have what the wages are going to be for a whole year, normally. They say, so you're going to be paid so much per year or so much per month. I mean, it depends on what is written in the contract, okay? But normally you have that for the contract. And then you have on top of that, you have what your social security, et cetera. So all the social costs associated to the contract that you as an organization have also, okay? So you sum up those two, okay? And you see you divide it by the time unit. And there you have your, how much does this person cost me per day, year, month, or whatever it is, okay? And there are some very complicated, long discussions on how to calculate that depending on the type of organization, accounting system, and so on and so forth that you have. But I think that the coordinator really needs to guide you on that, okay? Because it's very particular to how it is handled. And I think that that's something that you will need support on, okay? But normally, if I remember correctly, the full working year is 1,700 and something hours by default, unless specified otherwise, okay? So you can take that as a rule of thumb. So if you've got a yearly amount of money and you divide it by 1,750, if I'm not mistaken, I have to check that number, then you have the hourly rate, and then you can extrapolate how much is in a month and so on and so forth. So it's 20 working days per month, 8 hours per day, and you got it. Normally, yeah, but again, I would advise you to take counsel with the coordinator to see, because I mean, I can point you to the articles in the grant agreement. I have no problem with that, but maybe they can be of more help to you also, because they know your particular situation better than I do. So ask them. If not, you can go ask me. If not, I do know that you have within the partners, you've got DST from South Africa, and they really know about this. And the problem in here is actually seeing that you're actually complying with your local labor law, that your contracts are according to that. And then after that, seeing which typology it is more or less straightforward. You need a little bit of guidance from the coordinator and from the maybe from the national contact point that you have in your country, or by default I will also go to the South African national contact point. They're really good in my experience, and they will be able to guide you very precisely on that. And if you really have a precise question, you can forward the question to in written with all the details to Leonard, and he will be able to, if he can't answer it, he will forward the question to me. I mean, typically, always, if you want to ask me a question, it has to go first through Leonard, okay? Because otherwise it's completely unmanageable from my side to answer to you directly, okay? Leonard is your point of contact, so go through him. Of course, if he can't answer your question, I'll pick it up.
Okay.
Yes, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Bernardo. I hope it answers your question, Suzanne. And indeed, I am the entry contact point, and we have an internal team that may be able to answer your questions. I would say a high percentage of your questions, hopefully. And in the end, if we do not succeed to answer you, we will check with Bernardo. I would like to come to Marina's question. Marina Sopeña Escalona, do you want to ask directly your question?
Hi, everybody. Well, I think that we just we have been discussing it.
Sorry, can you please speak a bit louder, because we don't hear you very well.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, way better. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we have been discussing already. I guess that, well, I actually wanted to mean the maximum EU grant, not the maximum EU contribution. So, yeah, we we can start calculating our costs, but I guess that we will need to have internal discussions and so on to know about the distribution of the EU money.
Yes, if I can complete a bit exactly, it's why is it a bit difficult for the coordination team? It's because of course you all will calculate your eligible cost on the portal, and then because we have this game between the pillars and the different rate of percentage, of EU financement, we need to have a global look on all the costs and all the contribution, and then we will have a distribution template.
Okay.
But yes, it's not because you put everything on the portal. After we have to work a bit on all the data. So yes, we need the internal and consortium meeting after.
Exactly.
And I guess that I'm sorry. And I guess that there will be, or it is expected that there will be a deviation between what it will happen and what we added in the grant agreement in the Annex 2, because there are already some estimations, right, in Annex 2 on the estimations about the maximum EU grant per partner.
Exactly. So if I may intervene here, I mean, that's very exactly the point. So there are two issues here. So the first one is that from the point of view of the budget distribution and how is that passed on to the partners, okay, that is something that goes according to your consortium agreement, of which I am not part of, or the commission is not part of, okay? So we give the money to the coordinator who then distributes it to you according to what is in your consortium agreement. That's the first thing. Second thing, indeed, you need to report your real personnel costs and your real costs, and that's mostly it. I mean, there's no other specificity to it, I would say. Yeah, I mean, it's really a matter of you declaring the actual costs, and we reimburse as a function of your actual costs, not of the budgeted costs. Okay, and there can be deviations on that, but they have to be explained, and if possible, and I'm not just saying if possible, ideally, you have to tell me about them when they happen. Okay, if you expect that this deviation is going to be very large or not, or whatever. I mean, you are entitled to do budget transfers between budget categories, and that does not require an amendment, but it does require my prior approval. Okay. Realize that for this size of consortium, that is going to be difficult, but I would encourage you to have, I don't know, at least 6 monthly update on how you're doing on your finances, so that you can detect any major deviations that you have to tell me about. Okay. And then just Leonard will say, okay, we've had this deviation, we're transferring the budget from here to here, and is that fine with you? And I will say, okay, that's fine with me, or no, you sure you want to do that? And do you have money to do the rest of the project? So again, that's the type of situation. And then at the periodic reporting, you will report your real costs, what you have really spent. And I will look at that and I will check and I'll say, okay, but you spent here more than what you expected. I will check versus what is called linear consumption. Okay, so I'll see in which month you're in. Okay, I will divide, and I will see what would have been the linear estimate in that point, because in such a large project that typically is more or less where the money is. Okay, and I will say, okay, guys, you spent more than what you expected. I will check things like what's the average personnel cost that you have with your real costs, and I will say, okay, your average personnel cost is much different, either much lower or much higher. I will say, okay, have you been hiring faculty professors, or have you been hiring students to do your work? Why is that? You see what I mean? I'll look at that type of detail, okay? And it's normal that you have deviations, but you have to tell me, well, tell your coordinator, who then will tell me about it.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Bernardo.
Again, the overall thing is that you have a maximum budget envelope, and you can more or less move relatively freely within that as long as you do the work that you promised. But you have to tell me about it.
And you have to tell us before. Sumia, you asked a question on the chat, but Mathilde did answer directly on the chat to your question. So I don't know if you want to ask it again directly, so the others can take profit of it. Sumia Bouchouk.
Yeah, hello, do you hear me?
Yes, correctly.
Great, so I'm Sumia from Algeria. I think that we were suggested by Mr. Salami as administrators for this project. We would really know if it's really suggested or required to provide any contracts, or it's not the case. That's it.
So for the reporting, you don't have to provide the contract, but you have to have them, of course, because you have to get a contract for your personal costs, for your personal, but you have to provide them only if you are audited. But for the reporting, we don't need it. We are not going to check, but you have to get them, to keep them, and if you are audited, one time you will have to provide them, but not for the reporting.
Exactly. Let me explain that in detail. I mean, I've been on the other side for a big RTO in Spain, a research and technology organization there, and I have suffered, and the word is suffer, an audit of several projects that were not very well documented. Okay, that was something that I inherited, and sadly there was documentation that was not so nice. But when the auditors come, and they can come up to, if I remember correctly, 2.5 years after the project ends, or 5 years after the project ends. I can't remember. They've just changed the rules, so I'm not sure if it's still 5 years. But up to a certain time after the project ends, the auditors can come randomly, and they will say, okay, show me your costs. Show me these are what the eligible costs are that you claimed. And we will need, please, if you can produce it, we will need to see the timesheets. We will need to see the contracts for these people that you had at that time. We will need to see the amounts. We will need to see the invoices. We will need to, you see what I mean? They will go into the whole detail, okay? And they will ask for that contract, and they will ask for that timesheet, and they will ask for that invoice, okay? And if 2.5 years after the project, you do not have that contract, paper, timesheet, or whatever, then what happens is that the cost will be declared ineligible and you'll have to give the money back. Okay, so when you are incurring the cost, when you're actually doing the project, it's very easy to have that documentation. You just have the contract on hand, you make a photocopy of it, and you put it in a nice binder, okay, and leave it there for the next 5 years. And if something, and after those 5 years have passed and you do no longer need that, you just put that in the bin and that's it. But that will give you peace of mind. So if you do this as you are incurring the cost, as the project is being executed, it's relatively easy. It takes time, not too much, but it's relatively easy. If you have to come up with these documents 2, 3, 5 years after the fact, then it becomes complicated because people will have moved. And so, for example, for air travel, I mean, for travel, you have to have the travel thing, the tickets. You have to have, if you're going to a conference, you have to have, I advise that you have, for example, the presentation that you gave at the conference, a copy of that presentation, a copy of the agenda where your name appears so that it's clear that you were at that conference at that particular time. Okay? And then with that and plane ticket, you're fine. You're good to go. You don't have to have more than that. And at that moment, it's really easy to have, okay? And let's say the auditors will go to the detail, for example, of checking the holiday records of the company and see if that matches the timesheets, okay? So again, and they're very exhaustive, very nice people. Huh? I mean, it was a delight to work with them, but it was tough. So my advice to you is keep the documentation now. It's much easier now than if you have to do it later. So yeah, I hope I'm not scaring you too much, huh? But I'm going to the worst case scenario, okay? But
I guess you are. But it's your role also. So.
But let's say in the reporting periods, I will not go into that level of detail of asking for timesheets unless I have a suspicion of something not going right, okay? Typically, we don't ask for them, okay? And that is left for the audits that happen or for the certificates and the financial statements. When you have, if you have more than 325,000 euros of direct costs, you will have to provide at the end a certificate from an independent auditor that will look at all your costs and will tell you, okay, yes, these costs are as they claim they have been, and they have been properly calculated, and here is our report on that. And they probably will have to look at your timesheets, okay, and other supporting evidence, okay? So my advice to you is get this. It's really important. The point that Ben made of keeping documentation and records is very important, very, very important, because it can lead to very unpleasant surprises. I mean, it's something that, I mean, I've had it happen to me, and thank God I was well prepared, and it was not too difficult to find all the documents, but it is arduous if you have not done it properly. And let's say the legal consequences are not that huge in the sense that, okay, it's money that you will get recovered. But if there are severe irregularities, it can lead to even financial penalties afterwards and stuff like that. So keep records, please, 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 please. That's my advice to you. Okay.
Thank you very much, Bernardo. I don't see any additional question, but we still have 6 minutes in the official schedule of this meeting. So Bernard, I invite you to take the floor. Also, I remember that Siegfried, you had a question previously, but I'm not sure that we answered this question. And I also invite, of course, Delphine and Flora to contribute if needed. Bernard, please.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Bernardo, for the nice insights. So it's really nice. So now I have two questions, especially revolving around the co-financing. For the partners who are taking part in Pillar 2 projects, whereby there is a requirement of co-financing, maybe Bernardo can try to walk through what are some of the eligible ways that partners can account for the co-financing amount. My second question, it's allowed the indirect cost, the 25% flat rate. So in case a partner is having a satellite office at the main office, so does the rent qualify to be an eligible cost? The rent for the satellite office, and also how can the rent of the main office be treated in the project or in the action? So maybe if we can get some insights about that. Thank you.
Okay, we're getting pretty specific here. I just muted myself. So that is going to depend on your accounting system, okay? Depending on whether you can attribute the use of a certain facility to a certain project or not, in terms of time and so on and so forth, it's going to be possible to declare that as a direct cost or as an indirect cost, okay? Normally, rental of offices, heating, cooling, computers, software, that type of paper clips, pencils, and so on and so forth, that usually falls under indirect costs. And as long as it is done, let's say, if it's done in your main organization or a side office of your main organization, we do not care as long as it's the same legal entity. You can have offices, as many offices as you want, as long as they are under the same PIC number. But that's a cost for that organization. Okay, so as for the specificity of whether it would be a direct or an indirect cost, that you have to go into, if I remember correctly, it's Article 6.2. Oh my God, 6.2D. But yeah, that's I have to check exactly which article it is. It's the one that defines indirect costs and how they're calculated. So you have to see what's your specific case. And I can guide you on to that if it's not clear to you, but it depends pretty much on your type of accounting system. Again.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So maybe
you send, the reason why send a request to Leonard, and I can further elaborate.
Because the main reason I put the question across is for the SMEs who are participating on the action, whereby some of them do not have any other project they are running currently. This being the specific project, so it's quite important to clarify that.
Yes.
So maybe I may request your guidance briefly on the co-financing. What are the eligible costs and what are not eligible?
Okay, so for the for funding, so we're looking at for funding agencies, so financial support to third parties, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so for financial support to third parties, what is eligible is so basically financial support to third parties is money that you get to a third person. Okay, that has some eligibility requirements in that you have to have published the call, you have to publish the results, you have to. So that's in Article 15 of the grant agreement, if I am not mistaken. and there is the list of requirements for the costs that you are claiming to be eligible. Okay.
Yes.
In that sense, the cost that is eligible is how much money you have given to that third party. As for what documentation you have to keep on that is whatever is in your accounting system proven that you have given the money to person X. Okay, that's the documentation you have to keep for yourself. And as to how much of that is eligible, again, the answer is overall for the grant, 50. How much will be reimbursed is, again, 50% of the whole grant amount, and for co-funding, it will be lower than 50% because, if I understand correctly, in that pillar, you're co-financing more than 50% overall.
Yeah, it's 50%. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's.
Okay, thank you. So maybe
I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. Thank you, you did. So two last questions. The second, the other question is on the data collection. We are having, like the African partners, there was a bit of data collection to be done, especially in the first year, and this one will feature in the first reports for most of the African partners. So the question rotates aloud. It's common in Africa, when you go to collect data, you go with some gifts. You give some gifts, not in form of money. Sometimes you buy commodities that are basic, like rice or any other food stuff. So we would also like to know whether those one are eligible.
Oh my God.
Yes.
That's poof. I cannot give you a definitive answer on that. That you will have to send me in writing, and I'll have to ask my lawyers about it, because I feel it's a yes, possibly if you had foreseen it in the grant agreement, but it's a gray area that an auditor would say no way. Okay, so. And I can't make that judgment ex ante for you. So I need it in writing. And then when you get an answer in writing for me, then you can say to the auditor when he comes, but I got an answer in writing from the commission.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
So put that one up in writing.
I'll put it on lighting. Yeah, because the gift are variable around 10 euros around there. So the last question is on subcontracting. I know that for this action, the cost of subcontracting were not really foreseen, but maybe is there a limit threshold for subcontractors if we want to subcontract for a service through the action? This is the last question from me.
There's no limit on the amount itself. Okay. So the point here is the difference between contracts for goods and services and subcontracts.
Yes.
A contract for a good and service is those are contracts with third entities that are going to perform work. Okay. A contract for goods and services is something that is done in support to the project. Okay. It's not a project task. Is not something that is described as such in the grant agreement. So the typical example is the catering for the meetings. Okay, or cleaning lady after an event, or that type of stuff. That's a contract for goods and services. Or if you're doing a demonstrator, somebody is going to dig out the foundations. Okay, and it's not described in the grant agreement that you're going to dig out the foundations, but somebody has to do it. So it's something that is done in support to the action. Other things, for example, website maintenance. Okay, the website maintenance is not something that is described in one of the work packages as we will have a server that will connect and we will, no, it's a service. Okay, so those are contracts for goods and services, are things that are necessary to execute the action for which you do a contract, but that are not described in the action. Whereas subcontracts are a specific task of the action described in one of the work package descriptions as a task or a subtask that you yourself are not going to do, and you're going to put a contract for somebody else to do. Okay, so that's the subtlety and the subtle difference. The thing is that contracts for goods and services if you have new contracts for goods and services that you did not foresee, you have to signal them as a deviation, okay? But that's fine. I mean, you have to tell me that you're going to have to do it if it was not foreseen, so that I can approve it before you incur the cost. And that should be fine. But for subcontracts, you have to tell me very well in advance, because any changes to subcontracts have to be fully detailed in the grant agreement and require an amendment. Okay? Irrespective of the quantity. Why is that? Because for a subcontract, since you're doing one of the tasks of the project, it needs to be specified in the grant agreement, in the annex on subcontracting, what exact task it is, what the exact amount is, and that certain rules are going to be respected. Okay, so that's why subcontracts, you have to be, I mean, what everybody understands as subcontracts, we divide into two: contracts for goods and services and subcontracts. So subcontracts, in our understanding, is something that you have to be very careful, because they have to be explicitly described in the grant agreement. And if they are not, there is a need for an amendment. Okay?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
There's no threshold amount. Huh? I mean, it can be €5 for a subcontract. Why not? I mean, it's.
Yeah.
But
very clear. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you to both of you. Suzanne, I see you raised your hand, so it will be today's last question. Suzanne, please. So, Suzanne, maybe you're still muted. Is there any last question in the audience? We are running 5 minutes late.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. My system was taking a bit long to unmute. When I was reading through the documents, I came across some terms which I was not very sure what they mean. There is additional remuneration and a personnel costs. There was something about additional remuneration, something about project-based remuneration and non-project-based remuneration. What are those, please?
Okay, that's very, very specific. Okay, let's see.
Please,
so
Bernardo, try to be quick, because we'll close after that question.
Okay, I'll try to be as quick as I can. Look at Article 6.2.a. Okay, I put the link there, and there it describes more or less what's meant by extra remuneration, but it is remuneration that is not part of your employment contract, basically. It's something like bonuses and so on and so forth. Okay, that's what it covers. So if indeed you're going to put that in your cost claims, you have to be careful, because there are limits to that, and they're pretty specific. So in that article, somewhere down there, it's described how to calculate the bonuses, but I think the people in LGI have actually, it is part of the guidance that I've seen in their presentation, so they will also be able to guide you. If they are not, I will also be able to guide you. So if you have a very specific question, just put it to Leonard, and I will be able to answer after I check with my legals and financials.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, colleagues, thanks again for being here. Bernardo, also for your assisting us in this Q&A session. Bernard, Flora, Delphine, Mathilde for being there also to support and to address the questions. If things are not clear, if you need additional answers or details regarding what we expressed, we are going to provide all the content, all the resources that Bernardo shared on the chat. We will send it out to you as a wrap-up as well. If you speak French, I invite you to attend the meeting tomorrow. It will be exactly the same meeting, but in French. So you are kindly invited to attend if needed. And I wish you a very good afternoon and keep in touch.
Have a nice afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much.
Nice afternoon.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a lovely afternoon.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.